Hello, hypothetical audience. I'm JJNW'S Ghost, and welcome to Hazy Cosmic Jive. Today is Friday, April 1st, 2022. That's right, it is April Fool's Day, and I didn't really think about that, so I don't have an April Fool's joke day prepared. It's also just not my favorite day of the year. I just hate seeing really cool things like get announced, and then I check the date and I'm like, oh, well, they're all my hype just won. So it's not something I particularly care for, but every now and then I'll find an April Fool's joke. I'm like, okay, that's really funny. I can't be mad about that. Another thing I can't be mad about, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I talked about it last week, how I was really excited to get my copy, and it finally came in at like 6 o'clock Friday evening, and I 100% of the game by the time I went to bed on Sunday. I don't want to talk too much about it right now because I want to go ahead and do a full review on it. I already have that written. I just need to go ahead and record it and edit it. And I'm going to do the same for Planet Robobot as well because I played that I think I played it at the start of March. Either the start of March or the end of February. I don't remember exactly when, but I hadn't played it before, so I was getting it done before Forgotten Land. So I'd like to do the two of those, maybe in the same episode, if not, kind of like with Amphibia. Here's one at the end of one episode, here's one at the start of the other. So we'll get to that pretty soon, along with some of those anime movies I've been watching. And speaking of those movies that I was rewatching, I did finally get around to rewatching Perfect Blue. What was really interesting about that viewing is I was watching it in the living room, my phone was charging in my bedroom, but I kept just wanting to take notes on the movie as I was watching. Like, a scene would happen, like, oh, this is super interesting. Like, for plot reasons, thematic reasons, I want to write this down, not forget it. So I would pause the movie, go to my room, boom, 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 go back, rinse and repeat for like a really long time. So the movie took notably longer than it should have. It's only like an hour and a half. It probably took me like 2 hours to watch it because of that. But I'm so glad I did. I love this movie. And 100% I also want to do a piece on that. I haven't written it yet, but I'm very excited to be able to talk about it and share my thoughts on it. Another couple movies I watched that weren't part of the anime film rewatch was Godfather Part 2, and yesterday Clay and I watched The Princess and the Frog. I don't have a lot to say about them, so I'll just talk about them real quick right here. Godfather 2, it's great. I enjoy the first movie a bit more, but this one's still an absolute masterpiece. The Princess and the Frog has a great first third, but it starts to fall apart for me about 2/3 of the way through it. The songs start off great, but then they're just kind of okay. The humor was really clicking with me at first, but then later in the movie, it feels like they're trying too hard to get a laugh where it felt a lot more natural at first. And I just don't buy the romance between the leads. I buy that, they're developing a friendship and that, they're able to learn from each other and have a positive impact on each other at the end of the day. But I don't buy them falling in love at all. I love the theme of working hard to get to where you are, but also understanding that, sometimes you need a little bit of luck or you need a little bit of magic to, kind of get you over the top. And that's what it seems like the movie is really going for in that first third. But then it's like, no, you don't really want this thing you've been working your entire life for. All you need is a man. And then it won't matter if your dreams come true or not. It left this weird taste in my mouth. And what at first was like an easy 10 out of 10 kind of movie, by the end I was like, this is like a 6 or a 7. I was disappointed to see it fall so hard. I really was. But next up is Tangled, and from what I remember, Tangled won't leave that same kind of reaction with me. But something else I wanted to share is, so earlier this week, I ordered a Big Mac from McDonald's. Now, normally that wouldn't be anything to like call attention to. People go to McDonald's all the time. People order Big Macs all the time. But here's the thing, I don't. I'm more of a chicken sandwich kind of guy when I go out to places. Like when I go out to Wendy's, I want a chicken sandwich. If I go to Burger King, I get the chicken sandwich instead of the Whopper, Jack in the Box, etc., etc. Or I'll get like chicken nuggets. I love me some nuggies. Those are like undefeated no matter where I go. But I genuinely don't know the last time besides this week that I ordered a Big Mac. At the earliest, it would be sometime in like the early to mid 2000s. Like I think when I was living in Okinawa the first time I got a Big Mac, but I don't know. So I was craving some fast food. I was like, you know what? I want to try this thing. Like this is probably the most famous fast food item of all time. Let's give it a go. It was fine, I guess. It wasn't great or special. It's just kind of okay. But I'm glad I gave it a shot. I just know next time I go to McDougal's that, yeah, I'm going to probably just get nuggies and fries or a McChicken. I think I've tried their new, like, crispy chicken sandwich, and it was not that great, especially for the price. So I'll probably just stick with, like, a McChicken or nuggets. So the only other life update I have is kind of a big one, so bear with me for a bit. But I entered one of my manuscripts into a book contest on Wednesday, and I should be getting the results back really early September, the very end of August. So the story I entered is called Opulent Shoals. The story takes place in the eponymous town. It's about a group of high schoolers who develop supernatural powers after accidentally casting a spell from a mysterious book. There is an overarching plot and mystery about who wrote that book, how to get into the town, but each story is more focused on the characters' personal lives. The series is planned to be 6 novellas, with each main character narrating a different installment. I entered the first one, Cabbages and Kings, which focuses on Saoirse Lopez. In addition to telekinesis and telepathy, Saoirse is also developing a crush on another girl and questioning her sexuality. That's the basic plot of part 1. I wrote that manuscript during the summer of my 1L year in law school. I finished the second one partway through my 2L year. I don't remember where I talked about this. It's either in an opinion piece or in a previous episode. But I talked about this one day when I had class the next day really early in the morning, but I was really close to finishing something. I was like, I'm just going to power through it. And if I'm like half dead when I go to class tomorrow, so be it. I'm getting this done. That was Opulent Shoals 2. And I finished the third one during my 3L year. That's also one that I seem to remember finishing like really early in the morning. I guess it's just a trend. I haven't written 4 through 6 yet. I got really sidetracked when I was working on Project Oro, and now I'm getting sidetracked working on Orichalcum. I still have a lot of love for Opulent Shoals. I still really want to finish it. I just don't know when I will. Now, my hope is that I can win the contest and gain some exposure from it. Hopefully, I can land an interested publisher or an agent that can really help me get it out there. I love doing this podcast. I think it's a lot of fun. But my dream is I want to be a successful writer. It's been my biggest hobby and passion for about 20 years now, which feels really weird to say. Like, it started journal writing in 4th grade, and here I am now, 28, almost 29. I really can't imagine what my life would be without creating and writing stories. It comes as naturally to me as breathing does at this point. Just because it comes naturally doesn't mean I'm necessarily good at it. I know I've had terrible ideas in the past, and everything I come up with now isn't exactly a winner. But I feel like I've gotten a lot better at being able to cipher the good idea. Is that the right word? Maybe. I guess cipher's fine. When it comes to ideas, I'm really good at separating the wheat from the chaff at this point. And I really like the system that I've used to determine that. The system is what I like to call having a why guy. The point of the why guy is this is a person who knows the ins and outs of the story and the characters about as well as I do, as well as any other person besides the writer could know it. So whenever I get a new idea, The why guy is the first person to know. Like, oh, this is what I think this character's fate is going to end up being, or here's a really cool idea I got for the story, your backstory, etc., etc., etc. Their job, as you can probably imagine, is to ask why. It's to challenge me on it. It's like, okay, so this is your new idea. Why do you think this is better than what you had before? Doesn't this seem like it conflicts with a lot of previously established ideas? Are you just going to try to scrap them? Like, what is it? And what I've really found is sometimes there are ideas that I think are certified bangers, but when I'm under that scrutiny, I realize, oh, wait, no, this doesn't actually work nearly as well as I thought it did. Well, never mind. I guess this is stupid. Thanks for, helping me figure that out. Other times, I've had ideas that I thought were dumb as rocks, but I at least brought them up. 'Cause I'm like, hey, I mean, I don't know, like, I think it's a bad idea, but I want to at least talk it through just in case. And then after talking it through, I'm like, oh my god, this makes perfect sense. Like, this was a missing piece of the puzzle that I had no idea was missing. Holy crap. I love sharing my work with other people, but I'd be lying if I said it also didn't terrify me. I've always been scared of rejection, not being good enough. I mean, it's a common fear. But it's to the point where I legitimately can't hear my own work out loud if other people are around. I will second guess every word. Every sentence sounds terrible. Any joke is cringe-inducing. Like, when I'm recording, I try to do it when no one is at home because I feel comfortable. Both of my roommates are here right now. And I hate the fact that they're here because I'm doing this. And I'm like, this just feels weird and it feels wrong. But it's also something I want to change about myself. I want to get better. Now, this isn't gonna, doing it once isn't automatically gonna relieve me of any and all fears I have about this. But it might help. I'm not sure. Like I said, everything I'm saying, knowing that there are people in the house possibly listening, I hate it. But it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully. I guess we'll see. Well, like I said, those are all the life updates I have. We'll be going on to our first opinion piece of the week. Last week, I did not include any Lain episodes, but we will be getting back on track this week. So here we go. What is this? I think these are layers. I think these are layers 5 and 6. But regardless, here's the next pair of episodes of Serial Experiments Lain. Hello, hypothetical audience, and welcome to some hazy cosmic jive. I'm JJNW'S Ghost, and for today's jive, I wanted to go back to 1998 and talk about a show called Serial Experiments Lain. Now, I don't remember when I was first introduced to Lain. I'd estimate probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I was aware of its reputation as a cyberpunk anime with various different gosh, I sound like Charles Barkley, with various different interpretations as to both its themes and its overall plot. I was mostly interested in it because it had the same head writer as Digimon Tamers. Now, a far cry from Digimon Adventure, Tamers starts innocent enough, with an uncomfortable moment here or there before devolving into a full-on horror show for its final arc. I remember loving that as a kid, and I did rewatch it. I believe it was last year, the year before, with Clay, and it still holds up really well. Now, I watched Lain when I was first aware of it, and it didn't do much for me. I do remember feeling uncomfortable when I would walk near a power line and, I would hear that telltale hum. But that's one of the only things I took from the show, aside from Let's All Love Lain and the opening, which is a certified banger. But a couple weeks ago, a few friends of mine started watching Lain, and their conversations and enthusiasm for it convinced me to give it a rewatch. And, of course, I wanted to talk about my experience. So what I decided to do is take notes for every episode while I'm watching them about what sticks out to me. And then I want to make a short video just about each individual episode and my experience with it. I want to go over things like, the basic plot, if there's any particular shots that really stood out to me, and what are the major themes that I'm picking up on from each individual episode and how they contribute to the larger themes of the whole narrative. So, without further ado, let's log in to Serial Experiments Lain. Layer 05, Distortion. Lain spends the first few minutes speaking to a disembodied voice, identifying itself as God. God discusses how humanity is stagnated in terms of evolution and seeks nothing but fulfillment of its own flesh. The Wired is now the only hope for human evolution. After that conversation, Lain then starts talking to her dolls and asks them to tell her stories, including one that looks like Alice. Like, not her friend Alice, but actually Alice from Wonderland Alice. And she starts talking about a prophecy, but then doesn't really elaborate. The next major scene is Mika leaving her boyfriend's house and finding Lain standing in the middle of a street, like while the cars are actively going by. Mika watches her sister for a little bit before pulling a Tobey Maguire and deciding that it's not her problem. Lain's face then appears on a large monitor and looks down on her sister with this detached but also somewhat disappointed expression. We then hear a report that the traffic systems were hacked, which led to a fatality. My best understanding from both what I saw in the episode and just kind of reading a few comments online is that Mika is the person who died. She was put into some kind of illusion with her seeing Lain in the middle of the street, and then she decided to not care about her little sister. Lain was watching Mika's reaction to see what she would do, and then made an executive decision. She then hacked the traffic controls and got her sister killed in an accident, which sent her sister into the Wired. Now, we know from the first episode that someone can enter the Wired after they die, or at least a part of their consciousness can. Mika starts seeing the phrase fulfill the prophecy everywhere, from being written in blood to written in her coffee. She freaks out every time she sees it and returns home, only to find another Mika, because Lain replaced her with a better sister. And then on top of getting replaced, she gets full-on deleted at the end of the episode. Now, Lain's mom has a line about the body being only a shell, and that the Wired is actually reality. Now, I'm not sure how true that is, but we've certainly seen by this point in the show just how much influence the Wired has over reality and how much it can change it. There's another conversation about how God exists in the Wired and is strong enough to influence the rest of the world, and I think that's what we see in Mika's implied death, which I think is all evidenced by, or which is all supported by Mika's implied death, her kind of existing in this purgatorial state in the Wired for a bit, and then being full-on deleted. It honestly made me think a lot about of the modern influence of the internet. We have things like the Arab Spring, which was heavily fueled by social media, as well as the prosecution of Ahmaud Arbery's murderers. Yet we also see things like the overabundance of cancel culture or cyberbullying. And I'm really getting the vibe that Serial Experiments Lain isn't necessarily a warning against technology and that, oh no, it's bad, it's too strong, it shouldn't be used, but is more just about understanding it. That this is something that can be used, whether it's used for good, whether it's used for bad. It is powerful, and if you don't understand that and don't respect it, you might be on the wrong side of it. Now, we'll definitely see if that vibe continues, because I don't feel like we've really seen the Wired be used for good things at this point. I mean, I think in the last episode, it was used and got a kid killed, but we'll see how it progresses, or if by the end of the show it's like, no, this is all a warning about how the internet is like this evil entity. Layer 06, Kids. Lain's computer setup has been getting larger and larger with each episode, and in this one, it honestly looked like the lab from the beginning of Mewtwo Strikes Back. And the grin on her face while she's at the computer, it's a bit creepy. And again, it's just showing how consumed she is by the Wired. And her dad is watching her, and it's made very clear that he isn't too keen on his daughter's new obsession, but that he also still can't do anything about it. So we see Lain inside the Wired having a conversation with the Knights, and it seems that she's on good terms with them, even though we don't hear what they're saying to her. I noticed that in this scene, Lain is surrounded by the color white, and she's also wearing white. As I've said in previous episodes, I feel like in this show, the color white is really symbolizing loneliness. And I feel like this is a scene that can be argued as either supporting that idea or going against it. It could be going against it because, well, Lain isn't alone. She's having conversations, and she seems to be enjoying both herself and the company. However, it can be supporting that white equals loneliness because it's seemingly a one-sided conversation. We get these distorted sounds and maybe like a brief image, but that'll be it. It feels more like Lain is imagining having a conversation with someone else to keep herself entertained or even to keep herself from going insane. It was kind of something akin to Tom Hanks creating Wilson in Castaway. We also later will see Lain talking to her friends, and while she does seem a lot more confident and affable, she also makes it clear that she would rather be at home working on her computer or inside the Wired than spending time with them. It's just more evidence of Lain's evolution as a character and the way the Wired has influenced her. Now for the plot of this episode. Lain sees children looking up at the sky with their arms outstretched. I wasn't sure if they were doing the salute the sun thing from Dark Souls or if they were offering up their power for a spirit bomb. But then the sky opens up and it reveals this image of Lain that other people can see, and with her being on top of the clouds with the light behind her, she looks almost divine, and it gives the impression that the children are actually worshiping her. Now she does some digging to figure out what it is that the kids are doing, and learns that this Sigmund Freud looking guy was doing experiments on kids and their psi energy, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but it's spelled the exact same way as the stuff from Earthbound. The experiment went wrong and the kids died. The professor hid his experiment away the best he could to prevent it from ever being repeated, but apparently it has been leaked online, and it is heavily rumored that the people that leaked it were the Knights. And so the kids holding out their arms in public, I guess, is the way that they're replicating the experiment. And the episode ends with a bomb planted by the Knights going off in Lain's room, and the Men in Black revealing that they are not the Knights, they are a separate entity. The main takeaway I got from this episode is that the internet is a dangerous place for children. Now, we've seen that in a previous episode, where a kid was shot due to a couple games getting mixed, but this one in particular has child deaths being a major plot point. In a similar vein, Lain looks a lot more adult inside the Wired in this episode. She's got earrings, wearing lipstick, and her outfit just seemed to look a lot more professional, at least a lot more so than the bear hoodie we got in the first episode. I like the subtlety here of the Wired making kids grow up quickly, especially with all of the things we can find on the internet now, from violence to porn. There's also maybe ever so slightly the idea of kids being raised by the Wired more than being actually raised by their family, which you could definitely argue is something we see with how powerless Lain's parents are over her. Now, given the divine image of Lain, the experiments, and the bomb, it seems that what the Knights wanted to do was to use their latent powers to project an image of God into reality. But since Lain is highly revered in the Wired, she was the one that ended up getting projected instead of the actual god of the Wired that the Knights are supporting. It seems that the Knights, based on that weird one-sided conversation they had with Lain, is that they were okay with her so long as she, didn't really pose a threat to them. But once they realized that she was becoming their actual god, they decided to get rid of her. I don't remember how things get settled between them in the show, but I am looking forward to seeing how this conflict ends up playing out. And we're back, hypothetical audience, and it's time to talk about current events. I'm not going to say much about the Will Smith thing. It's not a work of fiction or related to sports. So as far as Hazy Cosmic Jive goes, I don't really care. I will say that I've seen some great memes about the event. My absolute favorite being the who wore it better comparison between Jada Pinkett Smith and Jinzo from Yu-Gi-Oh! I would share it here, but I'm afraid Will Smith might slap me, so we're just going to go ahead and move on to sports. We're on the eve of the March Madness Final Four. We have Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. Unfortunately, the Peacocks couldn't keep dancing. But now that the Cinderella story has ended, the main storyline is the Duke-UNC game. Two rival teams who have never played each other in the NCAA tournament will play for a spot in the final. But it's more than just a trip to the finals. There is the endless bragging rights of winning the first tournament matchup and the additional storyline that comes with it. Either Coach K goes to the finals in his last season with Duke by beating a rival team to get there, or he is retired by his biggest rival on their way to go to the championship. This game is going to be must-see TV just for those storylines alone, and I can't wait to watch it. And in addition to March Madness, there's some notable stories in the NFL to talk about too. The Rams are reminding us that they are a super team by landing Bobby Wagner, and I can't imagine being a Seahawks fan right now. Not only are you losing two of your best and probably favorite players, but now you've got to face one of them twice a year. That's got to freaking sting. Another piece of news is that the Buccaneers head coach Bruce Arians announced his retirement, and Todd Bowles, their defensive coordinator, is going to be taking over as the head coach. There are rumors that Brucey and Brady just didn't get along very well, so it's really interesting to see Brady unretire and then Arians then actually retires. It kind of makes me wonder if there's something going on behind the scenes. But on the other hand, Arians, I think, has been coaching football almost twice as long as I've been alive. And he's had interviews where he's like, yeah, my wife and I have talked about, I might just get, so into coaching and, so intense that I could just drop dead on the sidelines. So this feels like it's a retirement that makes sense. I mean, he won a Super Bowl a couple years ago, was in the playoffs last year, was really close to winning that game, which was bizarre in its own way. What a weird game that was. So I'm not saying oh yeah, this is a retirement that makes sense because he's clearly on his way out. But it's no, it's it feels like with health concerns, it makes sense for him to step away. But just with the extra added Brady stuff going on, it's a little weird. Now, I am a fan of Todd Bowles, so I'm hoping he does well. Not too well, because, he's coaching a division rival. I want the Bucs to suck. I want the Falcons to suck. I want the Panthers to suck. And I imagine all three of them also want the Saints to suck. I expect it. It's what you love about football and division rivals. But I still like the guy anytime I've heard him talk or just followed his career a bit. So I hope he's able to do well enough. The other major NFL news is the new rule for playoff overtime. The new rule is that each team will get a chance to possess the ball. And if both teams have the same score after 2 possessions, then it turns into sudden death. So kind of like what we have now, where if both teams score a field goal in the first if both teams score a field goal on the first possession, it's true sudden death, but now it also applies to touchdowns. The Chiefs advocated for this rule a few years ago, after they didn't get a chance to possess the ball against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. I don't remember if there was any outcry when the Falcons didn't get a chance to get the ball in the Super Bowl. But after, the situation last year with the Bills not getting a chance to answer the Chiefs, the rule has been changed. I'm going to be honest, hypothetical audience, I think this rule is fucking stupid. I hate it for being postseason only. And that's not the only reason, but it's one of them. Because regular season games determine playoff berths and playoff seedings. They are still important. Look at week 18 last year. Like, the final game of the regular season went into overtime. Both teams had a win in your in scenario. They also had a, if we tie, we both go in, so mutually assured success, but they're also division rivals who hate each other, so as much as I wanted the tie, they weren't playing for it. But that is a de facto playoff game. When you're in, lose and go home. But the special rules aren't going to apply to games like those, even though they're like just as important. It doesn't make sense to me. The sport is the same regardless if it's the regular season or the postseason, so it should be called consistently. I also hate this rule because football is a team sport. Defense is still an important part of the game. Look at the two teams that made it to the Super Bowl. Both of their defenses made key plays in their conference championships so they could get there. One of which was an overtime game where the other team got the ball first in overtime, but then the other team's defense got the job done. The Bengals defense showed up in overtime against the Chiefs. The Bills had the same opportunity. They failed to execute. That's on them, not on the rules. And yes, I know that statistics, like under the previous OT rules, what is it? I think it's like playoff teams that win the toss are 10-2. It's heavily lopsided to whoever wins the toss. So a lot of people look at that stat and are like, playoff games are essentially being decided at the flip of a coin, and that's not okay. But riddle me this, hypothetical audience. How is this rule really any better? Like, let's take a look at that game, that Chiefs-Bills game, because what everyone was saying, it's like, oh my god, did you see those offenses? Did you see how the defenses were playing? No one would have been able to get a stop. So then, essentially what you're saying is this. The Chiefs got the ball to start overtime. They go down the field, score a touchdown. Then the Bills get the ball. They go down the field. They score a touchdown. So now it's sudden death. So then the Chiefs get the ball again. They go down the field, score a touchdown. Game over. Same result. There's 2 extra possessions, which are fun to watch. But the outcome is the same because no one is playing defense. The only difference is that, the Bills now would know that they could go for 2, so they could end the game immediately after they score their touchdown. And I know that is a big deal, and it can add layers of strategy to the game, but I don't feel like that's better. And here's why. Because it gives teams every incentive to go second in overtime, because then you know what you have to do, what you have to match, or what you can be better than to, go ahead and get the edge. Having an advantage for going second in overtime makes no sense to me. I consider overtime a punishment for not settling the game in 60 minutes. Your offense could have scored more points. Your defense could have made more stops. Ultimately, they didn't. And now your fate is on borrowed time. You shouldn't get a guaranteed possession in borrowed time. You need to earn your possession. You can earn it through playing defense. You can be aggressive on special teams. If you lose the coin flip, you can kick an onside kick. You can also just get lucky. And I mean, I get it, people not wanting a great game to come down to luck. But I feel like that is the risk of borrowed time. That's what makes overtime feel like a punishment. I've mentioned being a fan of the Rich Eisen show before, and I liked the proposal I heard on there. Don't change the rules of overtime, but change the rule of the coin flip at the start of the game. If you win the toss and you accept, you not only start the ball, you only start the first half with the ball, but you're also guaranteeing my team will start the ball in overtime. If you win the toss and you defer, you are also, you'll get the ball at the start of the second half, but you're also deferring overtime. So now that teams will know who is getting the ball if it goes to OT, you now know how aggressive you need to be in regular time, and that's when you can decide, okay, when we score a touchdown, do we go for 2? Do we not do the kick? Etc., etc. And I like that a lot more than having guaranteed possessions. And look, hypothetical audience, I know I'm in the minority here. Most people want to see extended overtime. Most people think it is more fair if both teams get a chance. I just don't see it that way. But I've been on my soapbox about how much I dislike this rule. Let's talk about video game news. Breath of the Wild 2 has been delayed to spring of 2023, but they did share some screenshots showing like a broken Master Sword, which looks pretty cool. I still haven't played the first Breath of the Wild. I'll probably do so before the second one comes out. I'm not really chomping at the bit to play it, because I like Zelda games, don't get me wrong, but I'm just not into open worlds. That's why Breath of the Wild doesn't really appeal to me. It's also why I didn't pick up Elden Ring and haven't really said much about it. Now, since it got delayed, part of me is wondering if Nintendo is going to have a new game to release in that window. I mean, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet should be coming out around that time too, but maybe they'll have a new Mario game. You know, after all, look at some of the titles that came out in 2017. Breath of the Wild, with a sequel that was planned to come out this year until it got delayed. Splatoon 2 has a sequel coming out this year. Xenoblade 2 has a sequel coming out this year. Odyssey also came out in 2017, so I don't think another new big Mario game would be that far-fetched. You could argue, well, I mean, that wasn't the last new Mario game. There was Bowser's Fury. That's fair, but I would kind of disagree with that just because, 3D World was a Wii U game, so it was a port. Plus, they just kind of added some side stuff. And the side stuff was really cool. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun with Bowser's Fury. But I don't think that part alone really... It didn't really feel like a new Mario game. It almost felt like... It just kind of felt like an expansion. A fun expansion, don't get me wrong. But nothing really new. And so I'm wondering if maybe we'll get something new soon. And even if it's not Mario, I don't think Donkey Kong is out of the running for a new game either. Ever since that Banjo-Kazooie Smash reveal that showed, K. Rool just chilling with the Kongs, I have been hoping that he will be a playable character in the next DKC game. I would love that. So, if there does end up being... Because it's also been quite a few years that Tropical Freeze came. It was a Wii U game, and then it got ported to the Switch, I think in either 2017 or 2018. So again... It feels like it might be about time for a new game. Whether it's Mario, whether it's TK, I'm pretty sure we'll find out in Nintendo's June Direct. Now I say June Direct instead of E3 Direct because E3 has been canceled for the second time in 3 years. The writing has been on the wall for that whole event for a while now. I am sad to see it go. I know some people think it's over bloated or it's boring, and I get that. I just love seeing new games, and I knew that, from this day in June to this day in June, I can expect just a boatload of new information, and I love that. Now, I do know that the year that E3 was canceled, so that was 2020, Nintendo did still have a June Direct, and Sony has been doing their State of Plays, so I assume they'll probably give us something as well. And I'm expecting, leaks and rumors to really start picking up in about the next month or so. I don't know if we'll hear a whole lot in April, maybe late April, but May, especially around mid-May, I feel like we're really going to get stuff going. The only other thing I have to say when it comes to video games is I was made aware of a game a few days ago that came out in 2019 called Y2K, a postmodern RPG. My friend and I watched a 2-hour review of it, which was less than flattering, but still made me interested. I ended up talking to my friend today, and he was like, honestly, I'm kind of interested in playing it too. Now, I'll be honest. I hate the title of the game. So first off, Y2K is spelled Y-I-I-K. So it looks like yick. And that was also how my friend pronounced it when he was first telling me about it. So when he told me, he's like, oh yeah, I want to show you yick. I had no idea what I was about to see, and I was kind of not... I definitely had my doubts about what he was about to show me. But, the I and the I is supposed to be Roman numerals for 2. You could have just made it 2, and I think it would have been fine. It would have been a lot easier to read for sure. But second is that subtitle. Calling your game postmodern in the description sounds perfectly fine, putting it on the website. But right there in the title, it just rubs me the wrong way. I remember telling Clay, I was like, it feels so pretentious. I could just sense the creator's liberal arts degrees. because that's what it feels like. Like, it reads like a title of an essay about a game rather than being the actual title of a game. It's just weird. But to be fair, hypothetical audience, I haven't played it myself. I'm hoping to convince either Clay or Wyatt, that's the other friend that introduced it to me, I'm hoping to convince at least one of them to play it with me, because I feel like this is an experience that's best shared. You know, whether it ends up being a really good one, a really bad one, or kind of mixed. I'll let you guys know if and when I pick it up, and you guys let me know if you think it is something I should pick up, and if you think I should stream it. I've never streamed a game before, and I've had some friends tell me they would love to see me do one. Honestly, I'm not sure if they're kind of making fun of me or not, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And that brings us to our show updates of the week. Pibby is back to airing 2 11-minute episodes. The first from last week is Commander Anne. It's about Sasha leading the residents of Wyrtwood as a resistance to fight off King Andrias. She's an effective leader, but insists that Anne should lead, despite Anne being honestly pretty terrible at forming strategies and leading an army. It gets to the point where Anne legitimately thinks that Sasha is trying to set her up to fail, but then Sasha makes it clear that she does not want leadership because she's afraid that her overbearing and controlling personality will destroy whatever is left of her relationship with Anne. And it's honestly really sweet. But Anne's like, you know what? The fact that you're self-aware enough to tell me this gives me hope that this time you really have changed. And also, you are better suited to this than me. You keep leading. I think it's a really genuinely sweet episode. Just a couple other notes. The snake monster that they fight, I remember looking at it and thinking, this thing is really cool. And Loggle, who's just a recurring minor character, got really jacked. And, good for him. Like, I just thought that was really cool. It was a good episode. The next episode we get is Sprivey. Sprig and Ivy are reunited and they want to spend some time together. Sasha brings them on a mission, but she splits them apart. The two end up screwing up the plan so they could spend more time together, but then they realize that their selfishness almost got some people killed, screwed up the mission. So they fix the situation and accept Sasha being mostly furious at them. I'm a bit torn on the plot of this episode. I know Sprig and Ivy are kids, but this seemed a bit too insensitive and stupid for them to do. But at the same time, Sprig became a superhero even though he was supposed to be lying low, so I could totally see him doing something like this. But the humor in this episode is great. The King Andrias pinata had me wheezing with laughter when I saw it. I'm a sucker for a Charlie Brown Christmas, so I love the peanut-style dancing that Sprig and Ivy were doing at one point. The really dumb hairdresser, I don't remember her name, but I thought she was really funny. And she had these giant red scissors that I'm convinced are supposed to be scissor blades from Kill la Kill. No one will be able to convince me otherwise. But all in all, it was another solid episode, and I'm just so happy to have it back. So a couple other show updates before I move on to Survivor. Trails of Cold Steel is getting an anime, but it's not adapting any of the games. Instead, it'll be adapting the Northern War between Erebonia and Northumbria that took place in between Cold Steel 2 and Cold Steel 3. I am so excited for this series, and it's not just because I'm a biased Trails fan, although, of course, that is a major part of it. No game has taken place in Northumbria, but it's one of the most interesting parts of the setting for me. A giant pail of salt. It came out of nowhere and then literally salted the earth and all of the people there. It turned a once prosperous nation into a wasteland, where people either turn into mercenaries or they probably just end up dying. Two of my favorite characters from the series come from Northumbria. One is a major protagonist in the Cold Steel arc. One is the major antagonist in the Sky arc. I'm so excited to finally see their home. And since it is specifically the Northern War, I'll also get to see General Le Guin and Sarah kicking major ass and being hot while doing it, and I would not miss that for the world. And we also got the return of Pibby for Adult Swim's April Fool's joke this year. Several of the shows that were airing were glitching out during their runs last night, and then Pibby herself just kind of made a few appearances either in the show or like end credits or just kind of in like some of the TV spots. For those of you unaware, Pibby is a short that came out like just before Halloween last year. It's about a children's show's character whose world is corrupted by this glitch that is moving on and consuming other worlds connected to Cartoon Network. Like in the trailer, you see like Fred Flintstone get killed by this thing. It is wild. The short is only a couple minutes long, and it is certainly worth a watch. I made a video reacting to it and giving my thoughts on it, so check that out too while you're here. Seeing this character again gives me hope that the show is being greenlit and might air soon. Now, like I was saying earlier, it is an April Fool's joke, so I could easily be burned by this. But I remember Adult Swim one year brought Toonami back for an April Fool's joke, and it's back on air as a regular part of their programming. One year for an April Fool's joke, they just started playing new episodes of Rick and Morty, confirming that, hey, here's the new season, it's back. So this does give me genuine hope that the show has been greenlit, and I'm really looking forward to watching the full thing. Now, I'll for sure watch it and talk about it here if it does become a thing. I just really hope I get the chance to. And unlike last week, I did get the chance to watch Survivor this week. To sum it up, Orange Tribe is a cohesive group, with Jonathan being an absolute unit. The episode went out of its way to hype up how great he is and how the other tribes are jealous of him. With all this hype, I'm thinking he's either the merge boot, because the other tribes are just going to team up and vote him out, or he is going to go on the greatest challenge run of all time, and everyone's going to be like, man, this is the time to take him out, this is the time to take him out, and then they literally just never get the chance to. Now, the blue tribe is a bit fractured, but still mostly functional, while the green tribe is a complete train wreck. It is a tribe of 5, but in reality, it's a tribe of 2, 1, 1, and 1. And I love it. I really hope they don't go to tribal again, so I can see this insanity unfold at the merge. And luckily for me, they didn't go to tribal this week. It was blue that went to tribal instead. Swati got caught telling everyone that they were her number 1, which backfired spectacularly. No one was trusting her anymore, and she got sent home after yet another shot in the dark play, but another unsuccessful one. So I'm kind of getting really, there's gonna be one this season that works and then just throws everything out of proportion. My honest guess is that it's probably gonna end up being Daniel. Green goes to tribal, he's like, I know I'm screwed, playing my shot in the dark, he gets safe, and now no one knows what's gonna happen. But now that it's been a few episodes, I feel like we are starting to see some main characters starting to form based on their screen time and the narration that either they're giving or people are giving about them. Jonathan, Omar, and Marianne from Orange, Dre and Romeo from Blue. I don't think Tori is a main character. I feel like she's getting quite a bit of screen time because she's constantly being targeted. She's from a city not too far from here, so I gotta root for the local girl, so I hope she does super well. I feel like everyone on green, except maybe Lydia, is a main character. She's just not getting a lot of screen time compared to everyone else. But like I said, this tribe is such a train wreck. I hope the winners from here, no offense to anyone else, but this has been so fun to watch. I was having a blast. Now, like I said, I'm pretty sure Daniel will probably be the main target if they go to tribal again. If his shot in the dark works, more train wreck stuff going on, I'm all for it. If it doesn't work, then I think he is probably gone. But his impact on shattering the tribe, I feel like is still going to make him an important character, even if he doesn't end up lasting. So I don't think I have anything else to say when it comes to updates, so we will be moving on to my second piece of the day, my review of Tales of Arise. And for today's Jive, we're going to talk about Tales of Arise, the latest game from the Tales series of RPGs. I feel it's only appropriate to start this review by giving a brief history lesson of my relationship with the Tales series. I have beaten Symphonia, Berseria, and Vesperia, and dropped Abyss. I gave it a good faith effort, but I just couldn't get into it. Symphonia is a game I am looking forward to replaying sometime in the near future. It's been over 10 years at some point. Admittedly, my memory is hazier of it than I'd like to admit, but it's something that I consider to be one of my favorite games of all time, and something that has heavily inspired me as to this is what I look for when I am playing a story-based game and when I am trying to make a story for myself. Berseria has an excellent story and characters to match it, but I just don't like the gameplay. It's fun in small doses, but to me it feels clunky, slow, and just not super fun. Vesperia, on the other hand, is an absolute blast of a game, but with a story that I think is a bit all over the place. And I feel like Vesperia is a really great analog to Arise in that regard. Gameplay is fun as hell with some definite problems, and certainly not the best in the narrative department. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. As always, I'll be judging the game based on 3 categories: presentation, gameplay, and narrative. I'll award up to 5 points per category for a maximum score of 15. We start with the presentation. Honestly, I think that's this game's strongest asset. The game's strongest asset. It looks great. I don't just mean it having good graphics, which it does, but I feel like the design of each realm captures its central theme. Calaglia's fiery wastes and its tall peaks just feel oppressive. Cislodia is a cold mountain region trapped in eternal dark because its light is literally being sucked away. It is somewhere where you wouldn't want to go outside, which is how its people live. Menancia, it's lush, it's lively, it reflects the mental state of its people under Dohalim. Ganeth Haros is this sprawling yet empty city, with the people having no will of their own and being empty inside. And then there's the 4th area, which I don't remember the name of, and it just didn't really do much for me, but I'm sure it looked good too. Then there's Lenegis and Rena. Lenegis looks fine, it's very pretty, very clean. Rena, I remember looking at it, and the words that popped in my mind were beautiful destruction. It's empty, it's lifeless, but it still looked beautiful. And it's, in just terms of its aesthetics, it is absolutely my favorite location in the game. Now, I can't say much about the character designs because it's a Tales game. As far as I am concerned, Alphen's design includes butterfly wings and an eye patch. Most of the cast wears sunglasses. I'm sorry, I love just those dumb cosmetic things you could do in a Tales game. Just real quick, back to Vesperia for a second, but I played it on Switch, so I played the definitive edition with all the DLC. So for like 90% of the game, Rapide was just dressed as Jotaro. Oh, it was so fun. I mean, I really can't say anything about the character designs because I know what they look like to me, but that's not really what they look like, and I can judge, to me, I think they look awesome. They look silly as hell, but they look great. So we'll just kind of give that one a pass. What I can talk about, though, is the voice acting. I played it dubbed, so all of my comments are going to be directed toward the English cast. While I feel like there's a line delivery every now and then that sounds a bit off, solid 95% of it is really good. Even if I think the lines themselves are dumb. Such as when Alphen is, after he's gotten some of his memories back, and he's saying, oh no, my body count must be higher than that of all of the lords combined. I think that's dumb. But his actor, I don't know the name off the top of my head, really sells his despair. You have Kisara and Dohalim's reactions to the lake in Menancia. That was a moment that I thought was very well acted. And overall, Erica Lindbeck deserves a shout out for her work as Shion. Shion. I'll probably end up doing both because I think it's Shion, but I look at it and in my head it's Shion. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get that out of the way now. But anyways, Erica Lindbeck killed that role. So she also plays Magilu in Tales of Berseria, who, for the most part, is nothing like Shion whatsoever. I was still able to identify the voice really early on. Like, I've heard her voice in quite a few projects. So I'm like, oh, couple lines, I know who that is. But she does such a good job as Shion. She really sounds nothing at all like Magilu. And I just all the props to her for that. Again, whole voice cast, with the exception maybe a line or two here and there. Really, really good. I haven't said much about the music yet. And honestly, it's because it just didn't do much for me. It's not bad, far from it. But it didn't really stick out to me. I thought the overworld music was fine, maybe a bit much. When in the first area, you're already hearing the Latin chanting. I thought the battle theme was fine. It's weird because I've listened to it outside of playing the game. I'm like, this kind of slaps. But during the game, I just never really noticed it. I think one of the only songs I remember hearing for the first time being like, whoa, this sounds really good, was the music for Lenegus, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do remember thinking this is really good. But after, writing my review for Trails in the Sky, and during that review, I could name several songs off the top of my head and remember how they went and how much I loved them. Man, this one felt really lackluster in comparison. But I will say, when it comes to music, I did really like the first opening. I didn't like it as much as Berseria's opening or Vesperia's, but I do think it's really solid. The second one, it was just kind of too slow for me. It was just a little too slow for me. Most of the music in the game, it's not bad. I just didn't get much out of it. The only other thing I can think to bring up in terms of the presentation is the menus and the art in the main menu. So the menu uses a different portrait of the characters depending on the story arc. All of them look great. I would not be opposed to more RPGs doing this in the future. I would honestly be 100% down for any of that. So I can't give the presentation a perfect score because I found the music to be so underwhelming. The rest of it is so good, it's easily a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Now for the gameplay. My first impression when I got my hands on Tales of Arise is that it's a Tales game masquerading as a Souls game disguised as a Tales game. What I mean by that is it has some of the superficial Tales elements, such as item names and spell names, but it clearly wants to be something more modern with a clear Souls influence, but still not forgetting some integral parts of the Tales formula, such as skits and goofy outfits. Arise does away with the TP bar in favor of the pseudo stamina meter from Berseria. Your chosen character can keep acting as long as they have stamina, which thankfully doesn't deplete when you dodge. There are now campfires in the overworld, which function similarly to bonfires in a Souls game. Sitting at one will restore all health and CP at the cost of resetting all the enemies in the area. Speaking of CP, since Dark Souls has a mechanic which limits your ability to heal, Arise decided to do the exact same thing. This game introduces a new mechanic called Cure Points, which is a number shared by the entire party. Support arcs like attack buffs and healing are taken from CP. Items can be used to restore your CP, but they're ridiculously expensive. Life bottles, which are your revives, cost about 1,000 each, which sounds about right for something that's that useful. Orange gels, which will restore 30% of your CP, cost 3,000 a pop. Why does this cost triple the cost of a revive? That is insane. I was constantly hurting for money in this game because I was always using it to buy orange gels, mostly because of Alphen's mechanic. So Alphen, the main character of the game, has a mechanic where he can lose some HP so he can do more damage with his attack. So whether I was playing him or one of the bots was playing him, He was constantly low on health and constantly needed healing. I also realized that the bots weren't doing a very good job when it came to dodging, and regardless of who I had in the party, they were constantly needing healing, which meant my CP was steadily always running out. So on top of all of that, you could also use CP for field actions. Shion's field action involved her healing somebody. So that actually made sense to use CP because, well, that's what CP is used for. But then you get ones like Dohalim who will make vines appear so you can climb something. What does that have to do with cure points? Rinwell absorbing astral energy. Why does that cause CP? Like Law punching something really hard and making a path. That has nothing to do with healing or support skills. It's dumb. I hated this mechanic. Now that being said, I feel like it's important to say I don't hate the pseudo stamina gauge. I really don't remember what they called it. In Berseria, it was like souls. I honestly don't remember what it was called here in Arise, so I'm just going to be calling it pseudo stamina the whole time. So I was playing as Rinwell for the majority of the game, so being able to continuously cast spells was great. And I do understand the need to have some kind of a limit on healing. But here's the thing. Most of Rinwell's really good spells came out slowly, and so they would cost quite a bit of stamina. Just do the same for like strong healing spells and revival spells. I'm pretty sure it does that anyways. I didn't play as Shion when she got those, and I only played Dohalim a couple times. I would assume those revives take quite a bit of stamina to use. That's fine. That's your cost. They come out slow and have a big cost. You don't need this other thing on top of it. I just hated it. It just made it feel all the more unnecessary. So, with CP out of the way, let's talk about the good things, because this game is fun as heck. I love the frantic nature of Tails' combat, and this now pseudo stamina gauge kind of encourages that because it allows you to go crazy for as long as you can. I like how every character in a Tails game has a different playstyle, and I really like how they implemented this in Arise with everyone having unique mechanics. You know, I mentioned Alphonse already. Dohalim relies on perfect dodges to make his staff longer and harder so it can extend combos. Kisara can't dodge, but instead she uses her giant shield to actually block attacks. Shion has a gun, which she can use like special bullets for. I honestly, like, when it was explained to me in the game, I didn't quite grasp it, and I tried playing with her a few times after, and I just couldn't figure out how to get it to work. And then Law can enter a special state once he starts popping off. Like he does enough damage, or it's like his combos are long enough. He just becomes a lot better. And then there's Rinwell. Her mechanic is stupid, and I mean that in the best possible way. So she can cast a spell, and instead of firing it off immediately, she can store it. So once she holds a spell, if she then casts the same spell, it then gets upcasted into something stronger, unless it's already a max level spell like Meteor Storm. If she casts a completely different spell, or casts one that can't be upcast, she'll just cast 2 spells in a row. So, for example, let's say that she casts Air Thrust, and then holds it. Then she casts Thunderblade. Thunderblade will go off, and then Air Thrust will go off immediately after. If she casts and holds Air Thrust, but then casts Air Thrust again, it gets upcasted into, I don't remember what the level 2 wind spell was. It's the one where they go across the stage that missed every time I used it. Like, actually, upcasting Air Thrust was not very good. Thunderblade was. It's Thunderblade got upcasted into Holy Lance. Holy Lance into Divine Saber. I don't know if that got upcasted into Shooting Star, because I don't think I used Divine Saber a whole lot. But anyways, that's how it works. Rinwell later gets abilities that make it so the more casts you spell in a combo, the more spells you cast in a combo, the shorter her casting time gets. And your charged spells count as part of that combo. So there were times where I could cast like 6 Meteor Storms in a row, with the last 2 being cast in like a second each. That was so fun to do. I loved being able to pop off as Rinwell. I also have to say, I really loved a lot of her casting quotes. Like the blah 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 magic was right out of Vesperia, and then Magic Kazam just being straight out of Berseria. Loved those callbacks. So on top of the unique mechanics, there's also the boost gauge. These are reaction commands unique to each character, designed to counter specific enemies. Dohalim can trap fast ones, Kisara uses her shield to stop chargers, Law can carve through armor, Shion snipes the flying enemies, Rinwell can steal spells and add them to her charge, and Alphen just knocks stuff down. Like, he does not have a specific enemy type that he messes with. You can use on anything, including bosses. And if an enemy has been comboed enough, two characters can then use a boost command to instantly kill them and do damage to other enemies in the area. It's flashy, it's fun, and it keeps everyone important to the game. Like, even if someone is on the bench, you can still use their boost gauge commands. Now, that being said, charging enemies are awful. Like, just sometimes Kiara's reaction command to them just wouldn't work. And the charging enemies do way too much damage if you get hit by it. And then, they'll charge, you dodge because maybe Kisara's thing isn't full, and then they'll just turn on a dime and start charging you again. Or you charge them, you use Kisara's thing successfully, and then a minute later they're charging again, Kisara's thing isn't there, so then you just take the damage anyways. It sucked. Sometimes it also seemed like Rinwell's mechanic didn't work as well as it was supposed to either. That one felt more rare. Maybe it was just a timing thing. Kisara's, though, just felt like a broken mess. So to touch on a few other mechanics, when a character would use a Mystic Art, any spells that are active or being cast will be canceled. This got real annoying real fast when Alphen would just start popping his mystics multiple times in a battle, right as I'm about to cast Shooting Star or finish casting Meteor Storm, or while a Shooting Star is already coming down, about to start hitting the enemy, and then Alphen does his mystic, and then, oh yay, now I have to cast my shit again. But, at the very least, when someone pops off a mystic, while it does cancel all current spells, your pseudo stamina gauge will completely refill, so that's at least nice. Another thing to bring up, enemies just didn't seem to stagger. Like, they could start getting hit by a spell, and then just walk out of the spell's area of effect, and that also got annoying real fast. The only other mechanic I can think about is the owls. So throughout the overworld, there are several owls, and when you meet one, they give you a cosmetic item. And Rinwell has a very specific skill where once you get it, with every owl you find, you'll just start doing more damage, which I thought was great. And the more owls you find, you can get better cosmetics and items from the Owl King and the Owl Queen. And low-key, the Owl King is just the best character in the game. And the last cosmetic you get is you could just have the Owl King on your head. And I'm pretty sure I gave that to Law. So he would just, whenever he just shows up and goes, I can carve through armor, the Owl King's just perched on his dome. It was a work of art. And then just to touch on a few specific fights, the Dohalim fight sucked because that's when charging is introduced, and like I said, charging just sucks. Ganabelt casting Indignation is something I absolutely hate. One, because he gets it and Rinwell doesn't. Two, yeah, Rinwell hits all these really strong light affinity spells, and they make it a point that Renans can't use light magic. I mean, I guess he can because he's got the light orb or whatever. But it's, wait, why can she not get Indignation later? That actually would make sense for her character. This is actually kind of dumb. And it's really hard to interrupt him. Once he starts casting it, it is going to come out and it is going to hurt. So the main fight with Volron, when you fight him in Ganath Haros, super easy. The first phase is okay, this is ridiculously easy. Is there a phase 2? And then phase 2 starts oh, okay, now the real fight starts. I'm kind of getting a little intimidated, I'm a little nervous. Never mind, this is still incredibly easy. Loved that. I just did not care about his character at all. So the fact that his fight was a complete joke was kind of amazing. The fight against Ifrit was okay until the very end, because he does this move where he's going to hit everybody. I tried to dodge it. It didn't work. I don't know if I just got the timing really bad on it, or if it's just, no, you're going to take the damage. And the first time I did that, just everyone died and I lost the fight. That really, really sucks. The second time, Shion just barely survived that. And then I was able to get a couple people res so they would get the experience. That's stupid. The fact that there is an AoE move that is either impossible to dodge or just really difficult to, that can kill the entire party so you have to do the fight again, that is stupid. That should not be a thing. But overall, I did enjoy the gameplay. I do have some genuine problems with it, like I have my genuine problems with it, like CP in general, the charging enemies, and like I just mentioned that Ifrit fight, I really hated that at the end. But with all of that being said, I still had a lot of consistent fun with the game. I would give it a solid 3.5 out of 5 for the gameplay. And finally, the narrative. The setting is far and away the best part of the narrative. I touched on it earlier when talking about the presentation of each area, but I really do love how different each realm is. You know, we go from slave camps to an Orwellian state to a peaceful coexistence to mob rule, and then we end on a cult. Seeing the different forms of government on display was really interesting, and it tied into the first main theme of the game, which we'll touch on a bit later. So the story is split into two halves. The first is traveling Dana and fighting the lords. The second is about uncovering all of the backstory. I'm going to go backwards and talk about the backstory first. So the great spirit of the planet Rena devoured the astral energy of its planet, but it needed more to sustain itself. It enslaved the local population, the Helganquil, and forced them to serve it. But the Helganquil started to die out. To make sure that their lord was still looked after, they invaded Dana and kidnapped anyone with an affinity for astral arts. Those people became the Renans. They live on Lenegis, which is Rena's moon, while the main homeland is the realm of the Sovereign. Or at least that is what they are led to believe. And speaking of which, the Sovereign is not the actual ruler of Rena. It's a title given to a captured Danon, who has the balance of all astral elements. That's not something I thought was explained super well, but I guess it's someone who's like the Avatar. So, the Sovereign's job is they participate in a ceremony that, unbeknownst to them, will suck all the astral energy from Dana. The Sovereign is accompanied by the Maiden, who is there to control the energy and just keep it from going berserk. So the first time the ritual is attempted, it goes wrong. The Sovereign goes crazy and goes on a rampage. The Maiden is able to calm him down by absorbing the power into herself, which manifests as these thorns. And it's like when someone touches the Maiden, the thorns come out and will hurt that person. There's also an object involved called the Renis Alma, which is an orb that does something. I'm not trying to be vague. I just honestly didn't quite understand what the Renis Alma did. I think it's that each of the astral elements, which is, fire, water, earth. Is it earth? Yeah, fire, water, earth, wind, light, and darkness. And I think the Renis Alma is supposed to just be like each of the orbs combined into one, so it is all 6 elements at once. So after the Sovereign's rampage, the Maiden puts a mask on him that acts as a sedative for both his mind and his body, and puts him on a ship back home to Dana. So with the Sovereign gone, the Great Spirit of Rena needed a new way of getting astral energy. So the Great Spirit came up with a crown contest. Since the Great Spirit and Rena have darkness covered, it needs the other 5 astral elements. So there will be 5 lords elected from Lenegis, each one to represent the other elements. they will get sent down to Dana where they can mine and harvest. It's not really mine, but they can harvest all the other astral elements. Whoever gets the most will become the new sovereign of Rena. Now, we now know this last part is a lie, but the characters do not know that at the time. What is known is that the Renans invaded Dana, enslaved the Danans to harvest astral energy to take place in the crown contest. And I believe they said that this is something they attempt every 7 years or so. So that's the backstory that we learn at the end of the game, at least as much as I can both remember and was able to understand. The main story actually starts in Calaglia, the Fire Realm, when we follow a slave named Iron Mask, because, well, he's wearing an iron mask and he doesn't remember anything about himself. He feels no pain and has no memory of his previous life or even his name. He ends up meeting a Renan woman who he thinks he's met before, but he can't quite place where. And she says that she wants to kill the Renan lords for reasons she chooses not to discuss. So she has this special power that she refers to as her thorns that causes pain to anyone that touches her. Iron Mask feels no pain, which makes him a perfect partner in crime. He wants to free the Danans from the lords that, like I said, she wants to kill. She has the Fire Master Core, of which there are 4 others for all the other elements minus darkness. I honestly don't know how she was able to get it. I think it's supposed to be that she stole it from, what was his name, Balthus, I think, was the Fire Lord. They don't really go into how she was able to steal it. It's just cool. She was somehow able to pull this off. And by using the Fire Master Core, she is able to summon a blazing sword that Alphen is able to wield. It does... So he can use it without feeling pain, but it is just literal fire that is constantly burning him and doing damage to his body. But Xion can also use healing arts, so she is able to help him. Again, they are literally made for each other. This is perfect. So the 2 of them team up with the local La Resistance and defeat the local Lord of Calaglia. The 2 of them then embark on a journey to defeat the other lords, one of which who ends up joining the party because he's not a total asshole. Then they travel to Lenegis, learn all the backstory, and they go to Rena to finish the job and defeat the Great Spirit. So here's my problem with how the story is told. I feel like the backstory is presented in a way to make the Renans more sympathetic. They are pawns of the Great Spirit just as much as the Danans. And since they really are Danans, just with access to astral arts, then coexistence between the races shouldn't be hard. Plus, there's a side quest you get when on Lenegis that is meant to humanize the other lords. I mean, look, Balseph was someone who really cared about all his supporters and, the people in his house. Ganabel was an idealist. He had these dreams. He was going to make Rena flourish. Almadria was this person who had to fight and claw her way to the top. Aren't they just sympathetic? You know what, main characters and player? You should forgive them. The problem is, for me, it had the exact opposite effect. Yes, the Renans are pawns in, the Great Spirit's game of chess, but they're still acting of their own free will. They're also Danans, but they have enslaved, tortured, and murdered their own kind for centuries. Yes, the lords are people too, but it doesn't justify anything they did to the Danans. I didn't feel like forgiveness really started to be a theme of the story until we get to Almadria. I guess you can argue that a forgiveness shows up in Cyslodia, with Law forgiving Zephyr for, some of their history. But for me, it felt really flat when Law is forgiving Zephyr on his deathbed, and the reason Zephyr is on his deathbed is because of Law's dumbass and what he was doing earlier in the arc. I did not see forgiveness anywhere in Calaglia, and I really didn't see it in Menancia either, because, with Dohalim's theme, they're not really forgiving him for what he did, because he didn't really do anything bad. It was just his mindset wasn't as pure as they would have liked, but forgiveness doesn't really play into that, at least not for me. So, let's talk about that Almadria scene, where forgiveness really feels like it's supposed to, where it really kind of takes over as a major theme in the story. So Rinwell reveals that her family was slaughtered by a Renan lord, and she now finds herself face to face with that killer. She shoots a photon blast, one of her weakest arts, but then Law jumps in the way. He argues it isn't right for Rinwell to fight Almadria with hate in her eyes and anger in her heart. Rinwell argues that, hey, Law was able to get revenge for his family, so by denying her her revenge, he is being a huge hypocrite. But Law holds firm that just what Rinwell's doing isn't right, and then Almadria leaves so she could be fought later. Keep in mind a few things. One, Rinwell is right about Law not having this qualm with Ganabelt during the Cislodia arc. He was like, no, this guy killed my dad. I'm going to kill him. I have anger in my eyes. I have hatred in my heart. Was anyone in the main party saying, no, Law, you can't do that. You shouldn't be like that? Nope. They were all on the let's kill this dude train. Which leads me to the second point, which is that the first two lords were killed and the cast did not bat an eye. And even though Dohalim ended up being cool and joining the party, they never make it a thing that, oh man, maybe we shouldn't have killed the lords. Maybe we should have negotiated with them. Let's not kill from this point forward. 3, Almadria just killed a lot of people. And her actions, coupled with her callousness, literally just made her on sight to the entire party. Thing number 4 to keep in mind, the last 3 things I just mentioned. Okay, so with all those elements that I just said, it makes perfect sense for the party to fight her and kill her. And if Rinwell can work through some personal problems, then all the better. But revenge is bad, I guess. Even though Almadria is showing no remorse over what she did to Rinwell's family, is egging Rinwell on for the fight, and has shown a willingness to kill again. Forgiveness is a powerful theme. But it doesn't work when the person doesn't want to be forgiven or doesn't deserve forgiveness. It could have maybe worked, if Dohalim had stood up for her, since maybe he doesn't want to kill another Renan, or if someone in the group was a full-on pacifist and against killing full stop. But essentially it boils down to, hey, we're going to kill her anyway, but you doing it to avenge your family is completely wrong, says the guy who earlier killed a lord to avenge his family. So is there anything in the story that I think does work? Yes. The game presents a central question, not unlike Berseria. Berseria asked, why is it that birds fly? Arise asks, what does it mean to be free? Is it a state of being? Is it a state of mind? Is it both? Is hatred a form of slavery? Is it possible to coexist with your oppressors after being freed? I found this all to be fascinating. The concept of glossing over centuries of oppression due to some cosmic misunderstandings is asinine. The game does say it will take time, but the implication is that the new reveals are going to make things easy. I hate that. I want to see Danon struggling to adapt to Renans, like Rinwell does, or like that guy in Ganeth Harros, who questions the party's integrity due to their Renan companions. I want to see how people are living in Cislodia, and if that mistrust of each other is still brewing. I want to see Renans forced to live with Danons as equals, kind of like they did in Menancia, but here they're actively struggling to do so. The first half of the game is so good at setting up these questions and circumstances, but the second half ignores all of the nuance to chase conspiracies. The idea of Renans having the mentality of a slave because they don't question anything that their sovereign tells them is pretty interesting. But the story positioned them as being wholly sympathetic due to this, and then just went on with the conspiracies. For the characters, I wish I had something to say, but I really just don't. I think they're all okay. Law and Kisara are pretty much done with their arcs once they join the party. Alphen is fine, but to me, he gets a lot less interesting once his backstory is revealed. Rinwell is pretty annoying, with a legitimately funny quip on occasion. Dohalim is an interesting concept. A man who did good deeds for selfish reasons. His realm is based upon coexistence, due to him having PTSD from hearing screams. He doesn't care for the well-being of the slaves. He just wanted them to shut up. And I can't tell you how hard I laughed during that scene. I shouldn't have, it was something I was supposed to be like dreadfully serious. But I couldn't help myself. Just that concept of, yes, I freed them. I am a staunch abolitionist who believes in the equality of everyone. Because they're screaming cut on my nerves. Not because I actually believe anything I'm spouting. Like, it's just so insane. I love it. I feel like Shion has the most going on out of the main cast. But since she keeps most of it to herself throughout the majority of the game, and then she just speaks and acts in these vague ways, I found it more annoying than really interesting. So, I don't care much for the main cast, which is never a good thing in a JRPG. While I love the setting and the ideas in the first half of the game, the second half lost me with what it was trying to do. Combined with characters that unfortunately didn't click with me and pivotal scenes that just didn't work, I find the narrative to be the weakest part of the game. I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5. So clearly, this game is a mixed bag for me. I adore its presentation, had a lot of fun with the gameplay, and thought the first half of the game had an interesting central theme. But the underwhelming music, issues I had with some mechanics, and the second half's focus on less interesting conspiracies did weigh down my experience. Did I enjoy the game? Yes. Would I recommend it? Also yes. But I'd give a much stronger recommendation to Symphonia, Berseria, and Vesperia. Overall, I would give Tales of Arise a 10.5 out of 15. But, hypothetical audience, I'm very curious to know what you guys thought of it, because I know Arise got a lot of just phenomenal praise when it came out. So I am curious to know, what did you guys think of it? Am I misrepresenting the story? Because this is the story as I understood it. Are there some key moments that you think I glossed over or that you interpreted differently that, made the story a lot stronger for you? What did you guys think of the gameplay? Do you like the CP mechanic, especially if you played other Tales games? Do you think this was a good idea, or are you like me who just hopes they never see it again? And we're back, hypothetical audience. Unfortunately, my review of Tales of Arise is not an April Fool's joke. I did find the game to have its good qualities, but it still left me feeling disappointed by the end. But I did want to go ahead and include it in this week's episode because of this week's fortune. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future. I may not have liked how the theme of forgiveness was handled in Tales of Arise, but it was a theme of the game nonetheless, so including it this week just kind of felt like a no-brainer to me. Now, Clay is going to be off this next week, so he and I are planning on finishing the remaining Disney movies. We've reached number 50, so there's only 11 movies left. Hopefully, I'll have them all done by next week, and then I can start working on my completely not at all controversial ranking of all 60 movies. But we'll get to that when we get to that. And right now, I have a goodbye song to get to. Hey, this was really fun. We hope you liked it too. Seems like it's just begun when suddenly we're through. Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. but now it's time to go. But hey, I say, well, that's okay, 'cause we'll see you very soon, I know. Very soon, I know. Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. And tomorrow, just like today, the moon, the bear, and the big blue house will be waiting for you to come and play. To come and play. To come and play. Bye now.